Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How to Migrate from PlanetScale to SingleStore Free Tier in 5 minutes. My name is Matt Brown, and I'll be your moderator today. One of my main jobs at SingleStore is to organize our weekly AI webinars. We do 2 per week, demoing data and AI use cases, new tools and technologies. I post about these webinars every week, so if these topics are interesting to you, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or follow us on social to stay in the loop with those upcoming sessions. I'd love to hear your feedback and hope to see you at some of those future sessions. Speaking of future sessions, we've got a great one coming up on Monday. It's called Building Applications with Vector Databases. You can come join our session on the basics of vector databases and why they are so critical for AI applications. We've got a live demo and a code share that will be part of that session. So if this sounds interesting to you, feel free to register at the short link or the QR code that you see on your screen. You can take a photo or a screenshot of it. I'll put the short link in the chat in just a minute, and I hope to see you Monday. Back to today's topic. We would love for you to participate in the discussion throughout today's session. There is a Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of your console. Feel free to chat with us. We'd love to answer your questions as we proceed through the session. We'll try to answer 100% of the questions, even if that means possibly following up with some folks via email afterwards, depending on the volume of questions. Be sure to include your email address and your name in the questions. We won't be answering anonymous questions. We'd also love for you to try out what we're going to be showing you today. In fact, anyone who tries it today will be entered for a chance to win brand new AirPods Pro. Got the QR code to participate there on your screen and the short link. It's the PlanetScale AirPods raffle link. I'll put that in the chat in a minute. Very simple to participate. All you need to do is visit this link and log in. We'll tell you more about the free tier in a minute, but just logging in through that link will be enough to register you for the AirPods raffle, which I will announce the winner at the end of our session. Quick introduction for our speakers today. Vijay is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at SingleStore. Akmal is a Senior Technical Evangelist at SingleStore. They're both experts in data and AI technology. They're regular speakers at our webinars. Vijay, I believe you have the floor first.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. As Matt mentioned, my name is Vijay Raja. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at SingleStore. And it's great to be here today with Akmal to talk about migrating from PlanetScale and how to do, and really to do some show and tell around how to easily migrate data from MySQL-based systems. Okay, so we have a packed agenda today. So here is what we'll try and cover. So I'll kick it off with a quick intro into how to think about SingleStore when you compare that to PlanetScale. We'll go over an overview of SingleStore platform and how it works under the hood. We'll talk about some real-life customer stories and customer examples where customers have migrated from MySQL or systems similar to PlanetScale. And then Akmal will also walk us through a demo on how to easily migrate from PlanetScale to SingleStore. And we will show you a demo as well. Okay, and hopefully we'll have enough time for Q&A after that. So if you have questions, feel free to add that to the Q&A chat window. And with that, we will get started. So one of the key reasons we are having this webinar today is, as you probably heard, last week on March 6th, the CEO of PlanetScale published a blog and made a series of announcements about the company. In the blog, they said that in order to be profitable, in order to put profitability first, they've had to make some tough decisions and choices that impact customers, users, and employees. Unfortunately, they announced the decision to lay off a number of employees and members of their team, which is really unfortunate. Secondly, they also announced that they are sunsetting or ending their free tier, or what they call the hobby tier, which was used by a number of developers to build or prototype applications. Okay, so what it really means was that from March 6th onwards, it will not be possible to create a new hobby tier databases with PlanetScale. More importantly, what they announced was that anyone using the hobby plan will need to either upgrade to a paid plan from PlanetScale or migrate your data elsewhere by April 8th. So it's a very short window. So you'll have to either upgrade or migrate your data elsewhere. So databases, what they said was that databases that were not upgraded by April 8th will go offline. And so anyone that is currently using a hobby plan or considering PlanetScale has a decision to make relatively quickly. And so we felt that for the users who are considering alternatives, we wanted to provide this or utilize this opportunity to introduce SingleStore as a database, as a data platform, and especially introduce the SingleStore free tier and how you can easily and effortlessly migrate data to SingleStore on a free for life plan and really drive high performance applications or interactive applications, which we'll talk a lot more about today. Okay, so just given all of the background here, before we jump into the details, I want to do a quick high level comparison of PlanetScale with SingleStore, especially folks who are not that familiar with SingleStore, to try and help you understand how similar or how different these two data platforms are or databases are. Okay, so let's go through some of the basics. So in terms of key capabilities, in terms of the overview, PlanetScale is a distributed MySQL compatible operational database that's based on the open source Vitess platform, right? That's what PlanetScale provides. If you compare that to SingleStore, SingleStore is also a distributed relational SQL-based database that is MySQL wire protocol compatible. So we are MySQL wire protocol compatible, which means anything that works with MySQL and any queries automatically works with SingleStore. But here is where it gets different. While PlanetScale is an operational or a transactional database only, SingleStore provides transactional, analytical, and vector capabilities in a single engine to power your applications. Okay, we'll talk a lot more about that today, and then even you'll get to see some of that in the demo as well. Now, one of the key attributes, or a couple of key attributes that PlanetScale talks about as part of their key features is number one is the non-blocking schema changes, right? So no table locking or downtime when running schema changes in your database. Now, SingleStore provides exactly the same. We provide online schema, what we call online schema changes, which is allowing users to modify the database or database schema without locking tables or causing any downtime, right? So it's kind of a parity there. Non-blocking schema changes is what we call as online schema changes in SingleStore. Okay. One of the other key things that that PlanetScale provides, and I think customers like this for this functionality, is what they call branching workflows, right? Which is really the ability to create branches of the database, essentially copies of the database for schema changes for anything else. SingleStore also launched a database branching functionality a quarter ago, which really helps users quickly create private independent copies of the database for the purposes of testing, development, data recovery, or any other scenarios. So we call this database branching, and that's now available. And customers are already starting to use this. This is one of the features that was requested, and it's already out there. So again, from a branching workflow perspective, SingleStore already provides that. Okay. Now, here is where this thing started to get divergent a little bit. So let's talk about some of the other key capabilities or features that customers ask for. One is data ingestion. One of the key ones is definitely data ingestion, right? How do you easily bring in data into the database? So PlanetScale has something called a database import tool that they talk about that allows you to import an existing MySQL or a MariaDB database into PlanetScale. Okay, so that's the key ingestion mechanism that they talk about. In SingleStore, if you're not familiar with SingleStore, we have something called natively built in called SingleStore pipelines. Now, what that enables you to do is you can now bring in large scale, massively parallel data ingest from distributed data sources such as Kafka, S3, Azure Blobs, MySQL. Definitely MySQL is included, and we have a lot of customers who are bringing in data from MySQL very, very easily and very frequently. In fact, we also even launched a real-time CDC from MySQL, which means you can not only bring in batch data, but you can actually bring in real-time data as the data changes, if that is a requirement also, right? So again, we have something called single store pipelines, and we'll talk a lot more about that, in a little bit. One other key thing to highlight is in terms of analytical capabilities, a lot of the applications that users power today require some kind of interactivity, requires aggregations, requires some kind of analytics to be fed to the users, right? Especially the ones that are customer facing applications. Now PlanetScale, keep in mind, is built as a operational database or a transactional database. It does not have a column store for doing large-scale scans, fast aggregation, or for supporting complex queries. SingleStore, on the other hand, is a unified engine that can do operations and analytics, right? We have a combination of a row store and a column store, which we will talk about again as we get into the architecture, okay? So that becomes really, really helpful. And when we talk about use cases and customer stories, you will start to see this, is that it becomes very easy to power interactive applications, customer-facing applications, mission-critical applications with SingleStore because of this unique architecture that we have. Okay. Last but not the least, it's the age of Gen AI, right? Everyone is talking about Gen AI and building Gen AI applications using vector capabilities. PlanetScale announced last year that they are adding vector search and vector storage to MySQL. It is not available yet. Last I checked, it is still in development. It is still in private preview. To contrast that, SingleStore has had vector capability since 2017, way before the Gen AI revolution. And we already have customers using today to power, multiple AI-driven Gen AI use cases, including to do semantic search, chatbots, product recommendation engines, image recognition, so on and so forth. So again, I'll touch a little bit upon that as well. But again, as you can see, if you compare just at a high level, PlanetScale, SingleStore, you pretty much get all of the key features of PlanetScale, including MySQL compatibility, distributed scale architecture, non-blocking schema changes, all of that. But you get so much more. You get like a plus that you can use to then power your applications. And all of this is available in a free 4-hour tier. So there's a free tier that's completely free for life. So you can use it to power your applications. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about how, given this context, how are usually users trying to build these applications, right? Whenever we talk to customers, and by the way, we see this day in, day out when we are talking to customers, they usually start with an open source database like a MySQL or a Postgres. MySQL is one of the most common ones. And you have batch data that you're ingesting and then using that to power the application, right? Now, what happens? You want to now bring in some operational data. Guess what? MySQL originally built as a single node database. It kind of struggles, but then you throw in more money, you kind of vertically scale it, and then you can then use that to power operational data sources as well. But let's say you want to bring in now semi-structured data or JSON data. Oh, so you know what? So our customers then think, oh, maybe I should need a JSON database. I need a MongoDB to handle JSON data, right? Now, as my users grow, as the data grows, my query latency start to increase. My queries start to throttle. So guess what? I need to now add a cache. I need to put in a Redis into the architecture, right? Now I need to do some full text search on all of this data. Guess what? I need another stack of Elasticsearch to help support that capability, right? Now I need to bring in some real-time data, streaming data. Now you got to start thinking about how do I do fast ingest? How do I ingest from Kafka and all of these real-time data sources? That becomes another challenge, right? And now what if you want to do analytics? What if you want to serve analytics to users on your application? What if it's an interactive application? Oh, now you need to add another set of analytics engines, maybe a Snowflake or a Druid or a Rockset or a ClickHouse. And as you can see, and now today, when we talk about Gen AI, guess what? Oh, I now need to add another vector database to the equation, right? As you can see, it gets incredibly complex and inefficient. This is a very inefficient way of powering applications, right? And what typically, you're basically moving a bunch of data back and forth. You're doing ETL, you are replicating the data, and you're adding more and more bottlenecks to your infrastructure, to your underlying infrastructure, and typically runs into challenges. And what we hear from customers is, oh, my application is not fast or interactive enough. My queries aren't fast enough. The data is not fresh. The data is probably from, 3 hours old, 6 hours old, 12 hours old, or from a few hours ago, right? We hear this all the time. Oh, I can't scale fast enough. We are running into data bottlenecks, right? Or, hey, I don't want to move my data anymore. There's too much of ETL. There's too much complexity and the cost. It's not just complexity. It's the cost associated with managing all of these different engines and infrastructure, data movement, data replication, right? It just starts to create a lot of challenging situation scenarios for my customers. And we see this day in, day out. This is why we built a SingleStore. So SingleStore essentially is a data platform that you can use to transact, analyze, and contextualize in real time. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, it's a distributed relational database that can do transactions, analytics, and vector capabilities in a single engine. How do we do that? So when it comes to transactions, we have an in-memory row store that can do extremely fast writes and fast record lookups. And we are built as a distributed SQL database that is horizontally scalable, right? So as your data grows, you can actually scale horizontally by adding more nodes. Now, when it comes to analytics, we also have a column store, or what we call the universal storage, that is used to drive high performance analytical queries or run large scale aggregate functions. Now, speed is really our DNA. If you ask any of the customers, or if you look at our reviews, speed is really our DNA, right? And when we do queries, we deliver millisecond latencies. And the beauty of this is the column store is also, the column store, you also get like a 80 to 90% compression ratios, right? That really helps to keep your costs down. Okay, so that's the analyze part, and you can use that to power your interactive applications or even real-time analytics, right? Last but not the least, contextualize. This is really the AI or vector capabilities that I was talking about. And we have a number of customers already using it to do semantic search. And we also have notebooks that sit on top of the database that you can use to build, write SQL or Python code that, that you'll probably see today from Akmal as well. But eventually, why does all of this matter is, as we see with a lot of customers, what this means is by moving to SingleStore, they typically see about 10 to 100x better performance at almost 1/3 the cost. You can eliminate ETL, unnecessary data movement, and just build on a platform that's built for the future. Okay. So, so how does SingleStore work? What does it look like? So one of the key capabilities that we have, I think I briefly mentioned this, it's called SingleStore pipelines. What this enables you to do is can now bring in distributed high throughput parallel streaming ingestion from multiple data sources like Kafka, Amazon S3, Azure Blobs, MySQL, MongoDB. MySQL, again, as I mentioned, is a source. You can bring in data in real time, and you can use SingleStore to do transactions, analytics, and vectors in the same database. Now, like PlanetScale, you can actually run this on any of the leading clouds. You can run this on AWS, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure, or we can even have customers who are running this on-prem, right? That's another attribute. If tomorrow you want to, like a lot of the banks do, they want to run this on-prem, we have customers running this on-prem as well, okay? Now, even though we are a relational database, we are a multi-model database. What that means is you can use SQL, of course, and you can play with structured data all day, but we have other data types such as JSON, time series data, geospatial data, and even vector data. These are all first-class citizens within the database, which means now you can easily mix and match, SQL data with JSON, or you can do analytics on JSON data to power your applications, right? And all of this you can then use to power your interactive customer-facing applications, or you can even do real-time analytics. Akmal, did you have something that you wanted to add on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add for the audience sort of an FYI, Vijay, that you mentioned the pipelines. Yep. So I'll be showing a little bit of that awesome. In the demo. Plus, you mentioned the on-prem. Indeed, we do have customers that use that. And in fact, one of the things that we provide, in addition to the free tier and the $600 credits, is that you can actually get a license from the portal that allows you to install 4-node cluster wherever you want, on-prem or in the cloud. it's a fully functional version of the database, and the only limitation is just the number of nodes. Other than that, it is exactly as you've described it, and that might be an attractive option as well for some of the attendees today.
Awesome, cool, very, very good. Thank you, Akmal. Thank you for that note. And indeed, I think the free tier, as you see it, you can see it's effortless, it's easy to get set up, and you get all the goodness that we talked about here on the free tier as well. So again, who uses SingleStore? Today, we power applications, billing applications for some of the leading brands across the world, including 5 of the top 10 banks in the US, industry leaders like Hulu, Adobe, Siemens, Akamai, GE, Comcast, Kroger, P&G. I can go on and on, but you get the sense. Like, we are definitely used by some of the top 1,000 enterprises, Fortune 100, Fortune 1,000 companies. But that's one segment. We also have another segment, which is like about 150, 200 customers who are leading SaaS companies, right? So we power some of the leading fintechs, ad techs, martechs, cybersecurity techs, game techs, all of these new SaaS tech companies who don't have a legacy baggage, who are trying to build an application. And for them, this is critical because the application is the revenue engine, right? That is the product that they're trying to power. And if you have a number of them, including the likes of Fathom Analytics, Factors AI, Monitor-Base, LiveRamp, Hulu, Impact.com, so many that we can talk a lot more about. Okay, and one of the other factors is also, I mentioned these customers, but we also crossed a significant milestone last quarter. Is we just crossed the $100 million in ARR a few months ago, and we are on an accelerated growth path, right? And why this matters is also the fact that we have raised over 300 million over the last 3 years, and our financials continue to be really, really strong, which I think is really important, especially in these market conditions, right? Especially in these market conditions, customers value that financial stability and the fact that you're adopted by some of the leading enterprises across the globe, and also by some of the leading SaaS companies that are really revolutionizing the market today. Okay, so I think this is a key consideration. So having talked about this, let me dive a couple of minutes, talk about how SingleStore works under the hood. So we talked about the fact that we do transactions analytics and we can do fast queries. So as I mentioned, we have something called data pipelines that you can bring in data in real time, near real time, from diverse sources. Now, what is truly unique about SingleStore is our architecture. It's really the 3-tier architecture, right? So what we have is we have an in-memory row store. So all data that is ingested first gets written in memory, right? And that makes it instantly available for query. Okay. What we also have is, along with the in-memory row store, we also have a disk-based column store, which what we call like the persistent layer, right? So data, it gets written into memory, but it's immediately written to the disk as well. That's the tier 2 of the storage. And that, it makes us ACID compliant as well. As I mentioned previously, the disk-based column store also gives you the advantage of compression ratios of up to like 85 to 90% compression ratio to lower your TCO, right? So the tier 1 is in memory, tier 2 is the disk-based column store, and tier 3 is really your cloud object store, right? So whatever cloud object store you're using, that could be your S3, your Azure Blobs, or your Google Cloud Storage, right? So it is these 3 layers of 3-tiered architecture that really makes it really unique. Now, if you think about it, you can think of that hot data lives in memory, that top in memory, warm data in the disk, and the cooler data in the object storage. And all this coordination and data movement happens under the covers without any manual intervention. And that's what delivers ultra-fast performance at scale while optimizing for cost. The 2 other things I'll add to this is SingleStore also offers separation of storage and compute, right? Which is really important because you can now scale compute independent of the storage. So regardless, even if you have petabytes of data, it's very easy to scale and even still drive fast analytical queries. And last but not the least, as I mentioned, we are a distributed data platform, right? So we can scale out horizontally, which means the more data you have, you can easily add a couple of more nodes and grow out horizontally. Akmal, you get it?
Just thanks for that, Vijay. And just to add a couple of points there. So there's this very unique indexing that we developed for the in-memory skip list indexing. And I think Matt will share a link to that. So that's worth reading because you get an understanding that it is as fast as B trees, but because we are keeping the data in memory, I mean, yes, memory is fast to access, but we can access it even faster, okay? Because when you want to query stuff, you got to find it, okay? Wherever it is, regardless. And then again, with the query aggregation as well. So, it's a shared nothing architecture, which is awesome. That works really well. And, if you're familiar with the way that some distributed systems work, and you look back in time with things like Spark, for example, it's a very sort of similar approach in terms of kind of divide and conquer. Okay, so you have this ability to distribute the data, store it in multiple locations, and then when you issue a query, you need some means to be able to aggregate that, and that's where these kind of query aggregators come in. But we have this kind of ability to separate out the storage and compute, as Vijay mentioned, and that was something we introduced not so long ago, actually, and that really helps in many ways as well. Again, from a business perspective, managing cost is very useful. And then this provides an awesome way in terms of the technology being able to give you sort of better manageability of that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that, Akmal. Thanks for adding that color. Yeah, it really comes down to, I mean, you can think of it in three: speed, scale, and simplicity, right? Speed, just because of the architecture; scale, as I talked about, distributed scale out architecture; and simplicity, because again, you don't need to tie together 7 different engines to power your applications. Okay. I'm going to skip about through pipelines. Again, as I mentioned, we have pipelines from MySQL, and you can, Akmal will show you how some of these work so that you can easily ingest data from distributed systems like Kafka, or S3 or MySQL. I think it's better to show you that instead of talk more about it. But one thing I wanted to address, again, given the day and age we are living in, is the vector capabilities, right? Again, if you're looking to start on a database, you want to make sure that you can easily, it is GenAI friendly, right? Or it enables GenAI applications. So, apart from all the goodness that I talked about, SingleStore has had vector capabilities since 2017, right? The beauty here is that now you can co-locate your vector embeddings along with your enterprise data, along with transactional data, analytical data. You can easily combine vector embeddings with JSON, with SQL, all in a simple SQL query, right? We have built-in vector as a data type, so it's very easy to annotate data type as a vector as a data type. And we have also built vector indexes for fast approximate nearest neighbor search. So we have built-in functions like dot product and Euclidean distance that you can use to do nearness vector search. This becomes extremely critical for doing things like semantic search to power your GenAI applications, right? To power your chatbots or your product recommendation engines that you might want to build. More importantly, SingleStore makes it really, really easy to do something like a hybrid search, which is if you want to do semantic search with full text search in a single SQL query, that's as easy as just writing one simple SQL statement in SingleStore, right? So it makes it really, really easy and fast to build and power GenAI applications. And you want to be mindful of this as you're choosing your database or your data platform to start building start prototyping or start building your next gen applications. Okay. More importantly, last but not the least, we also have integrations with leading platforms like OpenAI, LangChain, Llama Index, Hugging Face, Vortex AI, and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, so enough of SingleStore. I want to just leave you with a couple of quick customers, use cases, and then I'm going to hand this over to Akmal to then talk about, actually show you a demo. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of case studies. Now, these are custom, by the way, moving from MySQL is a very common use case for us. We have like probably 50 plus, or close to 100 plus customers you have probably moved from MySQL. So it's a very common theme that we see. So one of the first case studies I want to talk about, or use cases, is really a company called Fathom Analytics. Fathom is building the world's fastest website analytics platform that offer a kind of an alternative to Google Analytics. And Jack Ellis, who is the founder and CEO, he's such a super fan of SingleStore that he wrote a blog entirely about powering his fastest website analytics platform. And here's what he wrote. In March of 2021, we moved all of our analytics data to the database of our dreams, right? and they have significantly grown ever since, and pretty much handling all of their data with SingleStore today. Now, the beauty with this, and by the way, here's a blog. I think I would highly recommend you check this out. And Matt, we can even provide this link to the users here or to the attendees here. Here, Jack Ellis talks about his journey around some of the challenges that they had, and then their journey to get to the database to power the world's fastest website analytics platform, why they chose SingleStore, and so on and so forth, from a very third party, very objective perspective. Okay, so I'd love to check this out. But basically, Fathom, they were using MySQL. They were using the AWS version of MySQL, but what they ran into was poor user experience, poor performance for interactive queries or analytical queries with requests getting timed out. MySQL would take maybe 7 minutes to process a simple group or a sum query, and a lot of the cases would probably just time out, right? So that was kind of the first issue, was the user experience or the query performance. Second thing was scalability. In terms of concurrency, was limited by AWS RDS due to connection limits and so on and so forth. So they just couldn't scale as their users grew, right? And what they were doing was, obviously they are pouring in more money trying to vertically scale the platform, being a single node database, but it was cost prohibitive for them to do that, right? And not only that, they needed this MySQL along with 3 or 4 other engines to power their platform. What Fathom ended up doing was they moved from MySQL to SingleStore and instantly started seeing results. Some queries were like 1,000 times faster, not 1,000%, 1,000x faster. And Jack says this, for some of his customers, it was 12,000 times faster. I mean, people don't even believe it, but he was like, it was like 20 minutes plus processing time down to reduce to just like 100 milliseconds, right? So it was a staggering improvement that a lot of their customers saw. But here's the kicker, right? What Fathom found was that once they replaced MySQL, then they said, you know what? I don't need this whole Redis cache. SingleStore has the in-memory layer. It's super fast. You don't need a Redis cache. I don't need a DynamoDB or a NoSQL database for for my JSON data. SingleStore is a multi-model database. It can handle JSON. It can handle time series. It can handle multiple other data types. So guess what? They ended up replacing MySQL, Redis, and DynamoDB. Incrementally. First they started with MySQL, then they got rid of MySQL and Redis, and then it was Dynamo. Eventually reducing about 60% reduction in TCO. So go back to that chart, that spaghetti chart I was showing you earlier. This is exactly what customers tend to do. They tend, you start with your bottleneck first, and then they can eventually end up replacing or consolidating multiple different engines, lowering the complexity, improving the performance, but most importantly, reducing the TCO. And for Fathom, what that meant was that, for Jack, what that meant was that he ended up not having to raise prices for his customers. Imagine as a business owner, imagine as a SaaS company, you don't have to end up raising your prices or taking a hit on your profitability because of your underlying data platform. So this was huge. And again, it's an amazing story. Again, I would highly recommend you to kind of read that blog from Jack on his journey building that platform. I'll go through one quick story, which this is another one called digital asset research. So if you think about digital asset research, they provide clean, objective pricing and verified volume data for about 10,000 plus digital assets, right? And they serve this for asset managers, for banks, custodians, hedge funds, venture capital firms. And they serve institutions like Bloomberg, Chainlink, and FTSE Russell, right? So they're pretty fast-growing fintech company is the way you want to think about them, right? Now, look at the volumes. In 10,000 plus institutional price digital assets that they track, 200 million trades per day. It doesn't, you can talk about the scales, 200 million trades per day. And look at their SLAs, 400 millisecond pricing for Chainlink, 1 second pricing for Bloomberg. So these are some of the things that, our, digital asset research was trying to, go over. They, again, started with MySQL. They started with RDS. Data ingestion was a challenge for them. It was painfully slow to get the, data in. again, single node database ran into contention issues very similar to the Fathom story that we were talking about. And they eventually ran into outages, even with just 20 to 30 million trades. With just 20, 30 million trades, they were running into outages, right? And, cost overages. They experimented Snowflake, but it wasn't price, especially for the analytical side, but it just couldn't scale to the price performance that they were looking for. So today, they're using SingleStore as the single unified database. Remember why we are called SingleStore. So today, DAR uses SingleStore as their transactional OLTP engine, their OLAP database. They don't need a separate analytical database. They don't need a separate ingestion engine, because now you have Kafka you have pipelines that directly pulls data from Kafka and S3 that do data transformations, and they don't need an additional caching layer. So essentially becomes the unified data store for powering your applications. And they are able to drive like 1000x faster performance at 50% lower TCO. And again, another reason why this matters from a business, all this performance is great. But guess what? What Dar said was that the fact that now they can do pricing in less than 1 second, from what used to take 15 seconds, now they can do under 1 second, in a few milliseconds. Because of that, they won the deal with Bloomberg, and they're now the pricing provider for Bloomberg Terminal. So that's the business impact that your underlying data platform can have when it comes to powering your, this new generation applications that you're trying to build. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good overview of SingleStore, what we do, and some of the key capabilities and how that matters from a customer perspective. I want to now hand this to Akmal to talk a little bit more about the migration and actually show you a demo.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Vijay. And thank you, all of you from wherever you're attending. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And bear with me whilst I just share my screen and let's get that up there. And let's take a look. And again, Vijay, Matt, please let me know if I'm saying something and you're not able to see my screen. Okay, so hopefully that's the migration tools and strategy slide there.
We can.
Thank you very much. And let's take a look at then the free shared tier first of all. Okay, and then I'll show you a couple of the tools that you can utilize. So as Vijay mentioned, this is something new for us. We introduced this not so long ago. And it's a great way to kind of get started with the technology. And I'll show you a little bit more about this in just a moment, okay? But essentially no-cost cloud deployment, and it's very, very fast. I will do that for you in real time, show you how fast the deployment actually is. Vijay touched upon a couple of those useful things, such as pipelines, for example, vector search, ANN index. All of these capabilities are available within this free shared tier as well. Great for prototyping, development testing, small scale apps. I do that all the time. As part of many of the webinars that I cooperate with Matt, we have typically some demos. Now, obviously, time is a constraint. Therefore, I can't show anything in terms of billions of data points, but it's great for demonstrating small scale applications. And it's the kind of POC at a very small scale. And of course, if you're working with a variety of different languages as well, all of that's very easy. We have notebooks. I'll show you that momentarily. If you're using other, development platforms like Node, for example, or even plugging in sort of, BI tools. I use Metabase a lot simply because it's free. It's just a jar file. And then I can connect that and I can build my pie charts and visualizations very, very quickly. Currently, the free tier is available in AWS US East 1. And again, I'll show you this momentarily, but we hope to add more regions soon. Okay, now in terms of the actual migration process, there's a couple of options that you could use. So, for example, there is the CDC tool, which Vijay alluded to. Okay, now currently access to that from the free shared tier is not possible, but I'll show you something else, okay, that you can do in the meantime. It's not a deal breaker. Alternatively, standard kind of techniques such as using MySQL dump, for example, or you can use the PlanetScale pscale database dump. That's possible too. Other possibilities, well, lots and lots of ETL tools around that could help, but we have something that we've just released within the last day or two. It is actually a SingleStore migrator tool, and I'll show you that. and Matt will share the link for that with you very, very, very shortly. Okay, so that's something that you can use. So you can see there's a variety of ways you could do it. You're not just constrained or limited to one option. And then going forward as well, I mean, once you've got the data in, there's other things that you could do with that as well in terms of utilizing notebooks, for example, or if you want to set up pipelines, that's possible too. Okay, so there's lots of possibilities there. This is the actual migrator. Okay, now that's kind of a little bit of a screenshot of that, but I'll actually show you the web page, which will be better for you, and we'll share the link with you in just a moment. Okay, and so one of the nice things about the CDC is that currently we have at least 2 of these kind of very popular database products supported: MongoDB, which I've demoed in the past, and MySQL, which I will show you today. I think Postgres is in the sort of kind of planning stages as well, or if not already, perhaps early alpha release or something. That's something to bear in mind if that's something that might be of interest to you. Okay, and so without further ado, let me just stop there. Okay, so I think we've shown you enough slides, and PJ's done an awesome job. But let me just go across and do this. Okay, let me make this bigger, and again. Matt and Vijay, please let me know that you can see everything okay. I want to be talking to a screen that nobody can see.
Yep.
So this, if you click on the link that Matt has shared with you in terms of the AirPods drawer, it will take you to this page. Very, very simple in terms of the sign-up process. I mean, you can use Google, you can use Microsoft, or even if you want to just enter your sort of first name, last name, and email address. And literally in less than a minute, you can create an account for the portal. And I'll show you what it looks like when you've accessed that. So on the left-hand side, you can see there's 2 key things that we highlight. I mean, actually 3, but 2 that are kind of important for today. Firstly, this free shared tier, okay? Currently in preview mode, pardon me. But it is readily accessible. Immediately, you can start using it, and I'll show you that. Equally, because you've created the account on the portal, you get this kind of $600 in credits as well to run a standard version of the product. And again, that's configurable. Now, you might think to yourself, well, $600 is not very much. I mean, what can I do with that? Well, the key thing is that bear this in mind. I've been with the company roughly 2 years and 10 months now. And then round about the time that I was hired, I created a free account. And I utilized a lot of the credits that at that time, it was just $500 worth of credits. Even today, I still have credits. So if you manage the resources very carefully, shut down things when you don't need them, you can make that go a long way. And again, it's great for small scale apps testing. And if you really need to do something a little bit bigger, there is the sort of 4-node version that you can install wherever you want. And I think very economical in terms of resources and sort of cost. I mean, I think we do offer a great package for that. So once you've signed up, once you're in, your portal will look something like this, okay? And I'd highly encourage you to create your account. Now, I've got a whole bunch of stuff because this particular account that I'm using, I have to play well and share with other colleagues as well. So you see a few things here that you may not see in your environment. But essentially, you can see here on the left-hand side, I've got this thing called Start, okay, which is where we are right now, okay? And then just below it, can you see there is this thing called Gallery? And Gallery is where we have all of these kind of various notebooks that we've shared. And these, typically, it's Python and or SQL code. One of them I'm going to demonstrate to you today, which is actually going to show you CDC working with a MySQL instance that's running. So this could be one of the ways that you could utilize and get your data across into the SingleStore environment. Equally, just below there, you can see there is this group. Okay, let me clear that and just highlight that for you. Okay, and this is how you really configure and set up some resources. So if I click on this, you can see that you've got a couple of options here, okay? You've got the starter workspace, which is the pre-shared tier, okay, here. You can modify the workspace name. You can modify the database name down here, or you can just take the defaults if you wish. Currently, it's configured, as I mentioned, on AWS. And we are looking at the moment at this region, US East 1, North Virginia. Okay. And if you just, well, I'll take the defaults for this instance. Okay. And I'll delete this a little bit later on. But you can see on the right-hand side, down at the bottom, you have this, just basically provision this. And if I click on this, there we go. It should come up. There we go. Almost instantaneous. So now you can see that it's given me some compute resources here, and I get a database here as well, straight away. And the database name I could have changed, but there's no need for me to create one. Essentially, that comes as part of the offering. And then just here, you can see, let me highlight this. There is this kind of connect button. Let's click on this, okay? And this gives you various kind of things, ways that you can connect using a client, for example, or an IDE or a BI tool, for example. If I click on this SQL IDE, it asks me, well, it asks me to create a user. I'll just take the default there. Okay, it's just using my first name and then appending some letters and numbers to that. It's set up a password for me already. I could change that if I want to. And I've got read and write permissions on this. I can change those as well to read only if I wish. And then I just say create user. That's fine. It'll be okay. And then here you can see it's given me all the information I need in order to be able to connect to the resources that I need. So I have the host name here. Okay. And I've got the port number. This is set up to 3333. I've got the username. I have the password. I mean, I could have changed that. Take the default, that's fine. And I've got the database name here. So all the information I need in terms of connecting to this is now provided. Because this is a shared instance that I'm using, again, there are other people using that same sort of compute environment. Although my database is only for me, only I can access it. It is wise in terms of getting this kind of PEM file, in terms of accessing this, because you want to do so in a secure method. And where you do that is just from here. Okay, you can access that. I did that a little bit earlier. Okay, so I've saved my PEM file, and I'll show you the connectivity for that. But essentially, that's it. I mean, you've got some other information here that you could utilize in terms of it gives you the entire connection string here if you want to do it from the sort of CLI, if you like, and that's helpful. But really, that's all there is to it. Okay, so immediately you can get started. Now, what I've done is I've got in a virtual machine, I've got a MySQL CLI client running, and I'll show you that momentarily, okay? That connecting back to the instance that I have. This one I don't need, I can get rid of, but I'll delete it a little bit later on, okay? So that's one way to get started. Another way is in terms of if you want to use, say, the standard approach here, which is on the right-hand side, much more configurable in terms of what you can do. You can choose your cloud provider here, okay? As Vijay mentioned, we do support the other major cloud providers, GCP, Azure, and you can select from many regions here. So if I was doing something like maybe something a little bit physically closer, Europe West 2, London for me, there's a whole bunch of other settings here as well, for example, auto terminate and so on. And then all I need to do is just click on next here. Okay. SingleStore Chi, that's our MongoDB compatibility, is auto suspend. Now here, it gives me a bit of a choice in terms of how much resources do I need. This is set at S00, which is 2 virtual CPUs. It's 16 gigabytes of RAM, and this uses up a tiny 0.28 credits per hour. And I can change this, okay? So if I edit this, you can see that I've got lots of choices in terms of how much compute power I really need and memory and so on. It goes all the way to a whopping, I think it's S384, which is over 3,000 virtual CPUs, 24 terabytes of RAM, and that uses up an enormous 432 credits per hour. Probably for the vast majority of you, if you are migrating in terms of the hobby plan from PlanetScale, I don't think you'll need that level. But I mean, it's available if you decide that that's what you need. All I need to do then is just say create workspace. Now, in this case, I'll choose not to, okay, because I have something running. This takes a little bit longer in terms of provisioning. Okay, that's the key thing to remember that. And I've actually got something that I set up a little while ago. Okay. Now, I mentioned the notebook. So from the gallery here on the left nav, okay, this is very useful. You can see there's a whole bunch of these notebooks, and these can you just click on these, it will launch, and then you can utilize them. Okay. And there is one that I've actually got running, which I'll show you which one here. It's right down the bottom here. Okay, it's this one. Okay, unified data analysis, SQL and NoSQL on a single database with Kai. And let me just move across there and show you. Okay, so this is the actual notebook here. And this is demonstrating how the pipeline's capability can be utilized with a MySQL instance here. So we have this CDC. And in addition, I mean, this particular notebook is not just confined to MySQL, just an FYI, we are actually reading in some data from other sources, such as MongoDB and in S3 bucket as well. So this is taking a variety of different types of data, and I'll show you the pipeline that it's created down below here, okay? So there is the CDC pipeline. So we just need to provide some information in terms of setting this up, okay? So the details of the host. Okay, we are excluding a couple of things here, such as MySQL and the performance schema. We don't need those. And what's the list of tables that we're interested in? We are interested in this kind of transactions table. It's got some data that we'd like to bring across to SingleStore, and then we provide some other additional information, such as the port number here, okay, which is 3306, and that we do require SSL mode here, as you can see. And then we provide our credentials just below here. In this particular case, the password and the user. And by the way, from this example, I mean, you run this, you'll be able to utilize it as well. So this is the CDC setup. We just provide some additional information below, set this up, create the table from this sort of pipeline, infer it using the Avro format, and essentially just start the pipeline. And it will read in the data from that MySQL instance. And just below, we are actually doing it from those other sources as well. So this will get the data across. And then if you are running this, say, you've got your PlanetScale data, connecting across using this, or let's say you've got a MySQL instance running somewhere else, you can do this. And remember, the pipeline, as long as it's running, if you've got new data coming in on the MySQL side, it will get fed across to the SingleStore side. And it's actually created these tables for me already, and I can query those here. So for example, this particular instance in terms of, let me just show the tables here. Okay, this is just using the SQL editor. And you can see here that it's actually copied across all of these from those multiple sources. So I've got my transactions, which is coming in from MySQL. And then I've got, I think, profile and history here, which are coming from MongoDB. The ATM locations are coming from the S3 bucket. And so once that's in and stored in these multiple tables, I can actually join across these multiple tables as well. So that's a great way to do that. Other things that I can do, well, one of the things that if you create the standard sort of workspace and instance in terms of compute, taking the S00, as I said before, it doesn't burn through a lot of credits. You do get a very useful feature as well, which is that, let me find it for you. Okay, and it's on the left-hand side here. Let me just, there we go. Let me highlight that for you. Okay, it's this thing here. So this is the standard instance that I created a little while ago, just before the webinar started. You'll notice that there is something here. It's called Stage, okay, which is, again, something that's in preview. So what Stage can do, if I click on this, what it allows me to do is to upload a file, okay, on the right-hand side here, upload new file. And so I can also create a folder, right? Create new folder, and I could call this test. Okay. And in this folder here, all right, oops, let's just go back. Let's just go back here. There we go. it should provide a means for me to, let me just see. Okay, my apologies. I think there should be an option to upload a file. It seems to have disabled that for the moment. Just forgive me. Let me just try and see if I can get that back. Okay, there we go. Sorry, trying to be too clever. What I can do then is just browse my files here, okay? And if I look on my desktop, I've actually got a CSV file. And this data, it can take a variety of formats. A CSV is one of them, okay? You could have JSON, you could have Parquet, other formats, and that can be up to 5 gigabytes in size. And if I just say upload file, it will load that CSV file. There we go. It's done that for me now. So it's actually put it into this folder that I just created a moment ago. And with this CSV file now, I have a couple of options on the right-hand side. I can automatically use this option to load to database here, as you can see from the pull down. And if I do this and click on this, what it will do then, it will ask me for a little bit of information here and say, okay, what's the workspace you want to use? PlanetScale webinar, that's fine. Okay, choose a database and then choose a table. Okay, let's now let's take a look. If I select, no, that's fine. I'm just thinking it might be from the, let me just try and see this. Okay, right. There we go. Select database, banking analytics, and that's the current database that I have created already. And I'm going to load this into this table called Iris, okay? Generate notebook. Oops, pardon me. There we go. There we are. Okay, so you can see that it's kind of, there we go, whirring away. It's faster than my arrow, but essentially what it's doing is kind of inspecting the structure of the data, and it generates automatically a notebook for me here, and it tells me, okay, I've looked at the schema. What you can do then is, using that particular database, it's automatically given me the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. So it's picked out the header species, right? And it's generated this table for me. I can just execute this. It's now created the table for me. It will create a pipeline for me to read that CSV data in. That's done. Okay, and then I just start the pipeline to read that. Now, because it's only 150 rows, this is going to run really, really fast. Monitoring the pipeline is not going to help, because by the time I start this, the operation's already over. There's nothing to see, okay? But what I can do is I can take a look at the data here, and let me just change that from 100 to 150, and you can see here, there we go. There's all 150 rows. So this is a great way that if you're using some alternative kind of ETL mechanism to take your PlanetScale data out, let's say you've saved it out in a sort of CSV format or something else, you can now ingest it using this mechanism as well. So last but not least, let me show you the free tool that we have. And I think Matt has shared the link for you for that already. So there is a web page that we have called free-database-tools. Let's just highlight this for you here. There we go. And on here, you can see one of these options is this PlanetScale to SingleStore Migrator. So one of our colleagues, Tim, actually put this together at very short notice, and he's actually tested this as well. So you're very welcome to utilize this. So once you've created the free account and you're in the portal and you've created a workspace, essentially you need to just provide a little bit of information as documented here. And what it will do, it will allow you to connect, ingest the data, okay, and essentially provide the means to be able to do that for you using this sort of web page, which makes your lives a lot easier. So in addition to the other kind of techniques that I described to you, maybe, you know, using the CDC, for example, or using that method that I just showed you in terms of the CSV file, loading it into Stage, and then having the system create automatically the table structure and the pipeline for you, and you've got a notebook that's generated, and you just kind of run through that and you get the data in. That's another possibility as well. Okay, so let's just go back here.
FYI, Akmal, we're right at the top of the hour.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
Quickly
Thank
as you can.
Okay, let me just stop there then, Matt. So I think I've shown enough there. I think that we've got the gist of this. So let me just go back here. And do you want to do your draw for the
Yeah,
AirPod?
let's do it. One thing,
Okay,
since we're at the top of the hour and no questions, no time for questions, I'm going to put in the chat 2 options to talk to us. hello@singlestore.com if you want to email us, or I'm also going to put a calendar link in the chat if you have questions about anything that you've seen and you would rather just talk it through with one of our solutions engineers. I've put a link to their calendar in the chat, so feel free to click and choose a date and time of your choosing. Let's get to the AirPods winner. Today's AirPods goes to Sandeep Kumar, VP of Information Security. Congratulations, Sandeep. Thanks for joining. If that's not you, don't give up. We're going to announce one more AirPods winner by the end of the day to someone who has tried out Akmal's demo today. So again, we've put those links in the chat. We will include them in the follow-up. You're going to get the link to this video recording. You're also going to get the link to that migration tool that Akmal mentioned. I put that link in the chat. It's that free database tool, PlanetScale to SingleStore Migrator. So you will get all of this. You'll also get a blog post. You'll get all of this via email. So I think that is it. Thank you so much, Akmal and VJ, for an awesome presentation and demo today. And thank you to our audience for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.